The wind cut through the streets, biting at my skin in a way that felt too harsh for September in Halifax. I could feel the chill seep into my bones, creeping through the thin fabric of my shirt, but it wasn't just the cold that made me shiver. At 72 years old, today marked the first time in 47 years that I found myself without work. The words rang in my ears, their weight settling like a heavy stone. We appreciate your input, Mr. Whittle, but the company is moving to automated inspection. Systems. Brent, the new manager, barely 30, told me. My heart sank as the reality hit. He barely looked up from his desk, his eyes not bothering to meet mine. The "I'm sorry" that he muttered felt more like an afterthought than any real regret. What bothered me more than anything wasn't that I'd been let go. No, what hurt more was the look in his eyes' annoyance, as if dealing with an older employee who should have long ago retired was simply an inconvenience. He didn't even seem to care. I could have said something, stood up for myself, told him that I couldn't afford to retire, that my daughter and grandchildren depended on my income, but I said nothing. I didn't argue. I just gathered my things, silently accepted the handshake, and walked out of the office where I had spent nearly half my life, my mind swirling with the reality of what this meant. The house felt unusually quiet when I returned home. Normally, it was filled with the sounds of Hazel's soap operas blaring from the living room or the shouts and laughter of the grandkids. River and Lane racing through the backyard or arguing over the bathroom line. But today it felt like everything had been muted. It was only 2 o'clock in the afternoon, far too early for the usual bustle. I walked into the kitchen, poured myself a glass of water, and sat down at the table. The silence hung heavy around me as my mind raced. How was I going to explain to Hazel that now we would have to live off my pension alone? She had never been good with money. In fact, it slipped through her fingers like water. After her divorce 3 years ago, she had quickly spent the alimony on yoga teacher training she never even finished. Then she moved in with me temporarily, she said. But that temporary arrangement had dragged on, and now she was entirely dependent on my income. I couldn't help but feel the weight of it all. How could I possibly tell her that everything had changed? That the life we had been living would never be the same again? The sound of the front door slammed open, and the voices of Hazel and the children echoed down the hallway. Absolutely outrageous, I heard Hazel snap. I specifically asked you to watch Lane. My daughter's voice was sharp with irritation, the kind that always seemed to come when she was juggling too many things at once. But Mom, I told you I had practice. River's voice rang out, followed by the sound of footsteps across the floor. Coach said if I miss another one, I'm off the varsity roster. Then Hazel appeared in the doorway, holding Lane's hand. The 10-year-old boy was looking up at her, eyes wide with worry. Why are you home at this hour? Hazel's voice was tired, and I could hear the edge of frustration in it. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. We need to talk, Hazel. My voice was steady, but I could feel the anxiety rise up in my chest. Something in my tone must have caught her attention because she immediately let go of Lane's hand and crossed her arms over her chest, her expression wary. What's wrong? She asked, her voice flat, as if she was already preparing herself for something she didn't want to hear. I was downsized. I said simply, the words slipping out more easily than I expected. The company is moving to automated processes. Hazel froze. The confusion on her face was palpable, and it felt like time stopped for a brief moment. What do you mean, downsized? She asked slowly, her voice shaking, almost as if she couldn't quite believe what I was saying. It means I no longer work at construction support. I no longer have a salary, I replied. I only have a pension now. Her face twisted as if I had just told her something devastating, her eyes wide with disbelief. But how are we going to live now? She whispered. It felt like a punch to the gut. The desperation in her voice made my heart ache, but I knew what I had to say. "Your pension is barely enough to pay the bills," she murmured, almost to herself, but her words hung in the air, making everything feel even heavier. "We'll have to save money," I said, trying to offer a solution, but I could see the skepticism in her eyes. "Maybe you should get a job." Her eyes widened in horror. "A job?" She interrupted me, her voice rising an octave, a mixture of disbelief and panic. "What job, Daddy? I haven't worked in 15 years. I don't have any skills. I tried taking those courses, but, it didn't work out. You could start with something simple. Maybe in a cafe or a store," I suggested, trying to keep my tone calm. She almost shouted. "You want me at 39 to go waitressing? Are you kidding me? Hazel, please." I began, but she wasn't listening. "Stop," she snapped, her frustration growing. "How can I be calm when you ruined our lives with your incompetence? Why couldn't you keep this job? What did you do wrong?" "I didn't do anything wrong," I replied, feeling the anger rise in my chest. "I've been with the company for 47 years. It was downsizing, and it affected a lot of people." "But not everyone," Hazel said, cutting me off. "So, someone else was more valuable than you. You had to fight for your place. You should have done that." "Mom, stop it." Rivers suddenly interjected, his voice sharp. "It's not Grandpa's fault he got fired." Hazel's eyes narrowed and she turned on him. "Go to your room, River. This is an adult conversation." "But Mom, go to your room," Hazel shouted, and River quickly grabbed Lane's hand and led her out of the kitchen. I tried to smile reassuringly at the kids, but it felt fake, the smile not reaching my eyes. Once they were gone, Hazel turned back to me, her face twisted with anger. "Is that all you have to say? We'll have to save money?" She mocked me. "Lane has ballet lessons starting next month that I haven't paid for yet. River needs a new gym uniform. I need money for the massage course I was going to start next month." I tried to remain calm. "I understand your frustration, but it's not the end of the world. We'll get by. My pension will be enough for the basics. Your pension won't even be enough to feed all of us." Hazel interrupted, her voice rising. "Do you have any idea how much it costs to feed 2 growing children? What about clothes? What about school supplies?" She was pacing now, throwing her arms around, her frustration pouring out in waves. "I can't live like this, Daddy. I can't keep counting every penny. That's not why I came back to you after the divorce. You promised you'd help us. You promised we'd be safe." I sighed, feeling the weight of it all pressed down on me. "I'm doing the best I can, Hazel. I wasn't planning on losing my job. But I can't just make money appear out of thin air." Hazel paused, her expression turning cold. "At your age, you should have expected this. You should have planned ahead. Put money aside." "I tried saving," I said quietly, but she wasn't listening. "I spent everything on you." "Hazel," I said, the words slipping out. "For your divorce, your housing, for the kids, ... You know that." Her face twisted into anger again. "So now it's my fault?" She shouted. "You're blaming me for your problems?" "No," I said, shaking my head. "I'm just saying, we all need to adjust to this new situation. We'll get through it, but we have to work together." Hazel shook her head vigorously, eyes wide with disbelief. "No, Dad, I'm not going to sacrifice my life for your incompetence." She took a deep breath, as if making some kind of decision, and then she said the words I never expected to hear. "I think you should leave." I stood frozen in my mind, struggling to comprehend what she was saying. "What? Leave, Dad? Move out? Find another place to live?" I stared at her, not believing my ears. "Hazel, this is my home. I've lived here for 40 years, so she shrugged. This is where we live now. Me and the kids. You can't provide for us anymore, so we don't need you." Her words hit me like a slap. I felt the blood drain from my face. "You're kicking me out of my own home." "I'm just suggesting you find a place you can afford on your pension," she said calmly, even calculatingly, "and we'll keep this house. After all, the children need stability. They go to school here. They have friends here." "But it's my house," I repeated, still unable to comprehend what was happening. "I've been paying the mortgage for 30 years. My name is on the deed." "It's just a formality," Hazel said. "You can sign the house over to me. It's only fair after all I've been through." I looked at my daughter and didn't recognize her. Where had that little girl with the pigtails who used to come running to me with her broken knees and frustrations gone? When did she turn into this cold, calculating woman? "I won't sign over the house to you," I said firmly. "It's my only asset, my old age insurance." "So, you're accusing a thing over the well-being of your grandchildren?" Her voice was high, hysterical. "Again, you're so selfish, Daddy. Always thinking only of yourself. That's not true." "And you know it," I replied, feeling the anger building up inside. "I've taken care of you all my life. Even when your mother died, I didn't break down. I kept working, providing for you. I paid for your college tuition that you dropped out of. I paid for your wedding to Grant even though I knew he wasn't right for you. I paid for your divorce. I took you and the kids into my house. I gave you the best rooms." That's enough," Hazel screamed. "Stop listing all the things you've done for me. It's your duty as a father to take care of your child. And it's your duty as a daughter to respect your father," I said quietly. "Especially when he's in trouble." "In trouble," she snorted. "It's your own fault you're in trouble. You should have done a better job. Should have done everything you could to keep your place. You should have stopped it." I raised my voice, which rarely happened. "I won't listen to these accusations. I've done my best always." "Apparently, that's not good enough," Hazel said. "I don't need you without money. So go away." The words echoed in my mind as I stood frozen in the middle of the kitchen. The air in the room felt suffocating. I looked at Hazel, my daughter, and saw only coldness in her eyes, nothing that resembled love or gratitude, only calculation. The woman I had raised, the child I'd spent a lifetime protecting and providing for, was standing in front of me, ordering me out of the house. The weight of the words hit me like a wave crashing down, leaving me momentarily speechless. "Are you serious?" I asked, my voice hoarse, the shock of it still sinking in. "You're kicking me out of my own home just because I can't provide for you anymore?" "Yes," Hazel answered without hesitation. The simplicity of her response sent a chill through my body. "Pack your things and leave. I'll call the lawyer tomorrow to discuss the transfer of the house." I felt the floor shift beneath me. As I stood there, rooted to the spot, my legs, once so strong and steady, felt as though they were slowly giving way. I could feel my heart pounding, every beat echoing in my ears. This was happening. My daughter, the one I had cared for, fought for, had just ordered me out. The house that I had worked tirelessly for, the house I'd poured everything into, was no longer mine, and neither was my daughter's respect. I slowly got up from the table, my legs shaky as I fought to keep my composure. "You're going to regret this, Hazel," I said quietly, but the words didn't carry the weight I hoped they would. My voice was weaker than I intended, and my heart sank further when Hazel's cold eyes barely flickered with any sign of remorse. "Only thing I regret," she said, her voice biting, "is letting you control my life for so long. Now I'm going to make my own decisions. And the first decision is that you have to leave." With those final words, the reality of it all hit me like a punch to the gut. I had to leave. I walked slowly to my room, feeling like each step was dragging me into an uncertain future. I opened the closet and pulled out an old travel bag. It felt strange, packing up my life into such a small bag. A change of clothes, a toothbrush, some medicine things I never thought I'd need to pack. At my age, I moved mechanically, my mind a fog of disbelief. How had it come to this? How had my daughter, my own flesh and blood, become someone who would throw me out without a second thought? When I stepped out of the room, River was standing in the hallway, his wide eyes filled with horror and disbelief. "Grandpa, where are you going?" His voice trembled as he looked up at me, the confusion in his young eyes a reminder of the innocence that still lived within him. "I need to leave for a while." "Son," I said, trying to keep my voice calm, "it will be better for everyone." "But why? Is it because you got fired?" River asked, his voice filled with concern. "It's not your fault," I said, trying to reassure him. "I know, River, but your mom's really upset right now, and she needs time to process." Lane appeared from behind her bedroom door, her face tear-streaked, her eyes red. "Is Grandpa leaving?" she asked in a small, quiet voice. "Just." "For a while, sweetheart," I replied, trying to force a smile. My lips trembled, and I couldn't make it work. "I'll call you." "I promise." "No, he won't." Hazel appeared in the doorway, her face stony, her eyes cold. "Children, go to your rooms now." "But Mom," River started to protest. I said now. Hazel shouted, her patience clearly running thin. River and Lane hesitated but eventually retreated to their rooms. The sound of their footsteps faded, and I was left alone with Hazel. She crossed her arms and looked at me with a cold, calculating gaze. "Have you got any money?" she asked sharply. I patted my pockets, my heart sinking further as I realized I only had $5 left. It was the rest of the lunch money I had set aside. "Not much," I replied, my voice quieter than I intended. "Enough for a hostel for the night." Hazel didn't seem to care. She nodded. "Okay, I'll call you when I decide what to do with the house." She walked over to the front door, opening it wide and stepping back, as if giving me an explicit invitation to leave. I walked slowly toward the door, the weight of every step heavy as though I were walking through deep snow. My chest tightened, my throat aching with the effort to hold back the tears that I could feel threatening to spill Dot at the threshold. I paused and turned back, casting one last look at the place that had once been my home, a place I had built with my own two hands. "I never thought you could do this, Hazel," I said, my voice breaking. The hurt so deep I couldn't keep it out. Hazel looked at me, her face a mask of indifference. "And I never thought you could let me down like this, Daddy," she replied coolly. "We're even." With that, she slammed the door behind me, the sound echoing in my chest as I stood alone on the porch of the house that was no longer mine. The Seabreeze Hostel, a small, unremarkable building in one of Halifax's most ordinary neighborhoods, became my refuge for the night. The 3-story blackened brick building was wedged between a laundromat and a grocery store, looking as if it had been neglected for decades. The sign creaked in the wind, and the porch steps sagged beneath the weight of the few guests that passed through its doors. But for me, it was all I had. A room for one was $30 a night. The receptionist, an older woman with tired eyes and bright red dyed hair, told me. I had nothing but the $5 left in my wallet. No credit cards, nothing to fall back on. I had spent every last penny on Hazel, on the family, on trying to keep everything afloat. "Do you have anything cheaper?" I asked, my voice filled with quiet desperation. The woman looked me over, a mix of sympathy and skepticism in her eyes. "I'm afraid not," she said softly. "But if you just need a place to sleep, you can stay in the recreation room. There's a couch there. It will cost $5. The color of shame rushed to my face. Was it that obvious? That I had nothing left? But I had no choice. "Thank you," I said, my voice barely a whisper. I handed her the bill. "I'll take the couch." She nodded without asking for ID, and handed me the key. The restroom is just down the hall. First door on the right. There's a kettle and microwave if you need to heat something up. I thanked her again and made my way down the hall, feeling the weight of each step. The lounge turned out to be a small, dim room with a faded couch, a coffee table cluttered with old magazines, and a small TV on the wall. A refrigerator stood in the corner, a microwave next to it. It wasn't much, but it was shelter. I sank onto the couch, setting my bag next to me. And only then, in the silence of this faceless room, did the full weight of what had just happened begin to hit me. My daughter had kicked me out of my own home. I closed my eyes and memories began to flood my mind. Hazel as a little girl, full of life and love. Hazel as a teenager, full of dreams and hopes. And now, this woman, cold-eyed, standing before me, telling me I was no longer needed. How had we come to this? When had everything changed? I thought about Hazel's life after Ellie died. Perhaps it was then. Ellie had always been softer with her, smoothing over the rough edges. I just kept working, providing for the family, thinking that was all I had to do. Maybe that was my mistake. Maybe it all started when Hazel was a teenager, when she started to expect everything without considering the cost. The divorce, the kids, me helping her out, it was all meant to be a temporary fix. But maybe I'd made it worse. Maybe I had never let her learn how to deal with life on her own. I sighed and opened my eyes, my mind a whirl of confusion. What did it matter now? I was 72 years old, thrown out onto the street by my daughter, with no money, no home, just a bag of belongings and a few scattered hopes. And then a knock at the door broke my thoughts. I flinched at the sound. It was the receptionist, standing in the doorway with a tray. "I thought you might be hungry," she said, setting a cup of tea and a sandwich on the coffee table. "We had some leftover dinner." I blinked, surprised by the kindness. "Thank you," I murmured, my voice thick with gratitude. "You're very kind. It's no trouble," she shrugged. "My name's Faye, if you need anything." She left, leaving me alone with my sandwich and tea, which at that moment seemed like a feast. As I sat there, I thought about how life could change in an instant. A few minutes ago, I had been walking through the door of my home, and now here I was, in this shabby room, the only place left to go. I finished my sandwich and glanced around the room. On the shelf beneath the TV, a small stack of lottery tickets caught my eye. A sign next to them read, "Try your luck. $1 per ticket. Contact the front desk." I chuckled bitterly. Lottery tickets, the last refuge of the desperate and the hopeful. How many times had I told Hazel not to waste money on them? But now here I was, staring at the tickets myself. What did I have to lose? I stood up, walked to the front desk, and asked for a ticket. I couldn't believe I was doing this. Faye smiled as she handed me the stack. "The jackpot's $5 million, she said. "No one's won in 4 months." $5 million? It seemed impossible. But then again, so did my life right now. What if? 5 million. A sum that could change my whole life. With that kind of money, I could buy a new house, secure migrant children's future, travel, not worry about tomorrow. "I'll take the golden cush," I said, pulling out $1. Faye handed me the ticket, and I examined it carefully. It was a simple piece of paper with numbers printed on it, but it held a lot of promise. "The drawing is tonight at 10 o'clock. Faith said you can watch it on the TV in the break room." I thanked Tarrant, returned to the couch, clutching the lottery ticket in my hand. Not that I seriously expected to win, but the very act of buying the ticket gave me a strange sense of control. In a world where everything was falling apart, I had made a choice, even if it was such an abysmal one. I decided to lie down, feeling the fatigue come in waves. The events of the day had worn me down physically and emotionally. Placing my bag under my head instead of a pillow, I closed my eyes, clutching the lottery ticket in my hand like a talisman. Sleep came surprisingly quickly, and I dreamed of Eleanor. She was standing in our garden among her favorite roses and smiling at me with that special smile I loved so much. "It's going to be all right, Anna," she was saying. "You rest stronger than you think." I woke up to the sound of the TV on. Fa was standing next to me with the remote in her hand. "I'm sorry to wake you," she said, "but a prank is about to start. I thought you might want to watch." I sat up on the couch trying to shake off the remnants of sleep. There was an advertisement on the TV screen, and at the bottom of the screen was a ticker announcing the upcoming Golden Cush lottery drawing. "Thank you," I thanked Faye. "What time is it?" 5 to 10, she replied. "Would you like some more tea?" I nodded, and she left for the kitchen. I pulled a crumpled lottery ticket out of my pocket and smoothed it out. 6 numbers that would have to match the numbers drawn to change my life. What are the odds? 1 in a million. Faye turned with a cup of tea and sat in the chair opposite, looking at me with interest. "Do you often play the lottery?" she asked. "Never," I answered honestly. "This is my first ticket." "Oh, then you'll have a good chance," she smiled. "They say beginners are lucky." I only hummed in response. There's no such thing as beginner's luck in statistics. The probability of winning is equally small for everyone, regardless of experience. On the TV screen, the draw began. The host, a young woman in a sequin dress, announced the size of the jackpot and the conditions for winning. Then the process of selecting the numbers began. 6 balls of numbers had to fall out of the latron, determining the winning combination. I checked my ticket. My numbers were 8, 17, 22, 31, 45, and 5 9-dot numbers I didn't pick myself. The ticket had the combination already printed on it. The first ball rolled out of Fellatron. "And the first number of today's drawing is 8, announced the announcer. I blinked. 8, my first number. The second number is 45, 45, also my number. I felt my heart start to beat faster. 2 coincidences out of 2. But it doesn't mean anything. I convinced myself. A coincidence. The third number is 22. I swallowed. 3 out of 3. The probability of such a coincidence was already much lower, but still within the realm of possibility. The fourth number is 59. F.A., who had apparently been watching my reaction, pitched forward. "Do your numbers match?" she asked excitedly. I nodded silently, unable to take my eyes off the screen. Number 5 is 31.5 out of 5 matches. This was beyond mere coincidence. I felt my hand shaking. And the last 6th number of today's drawing, I held my breath. The room became so quiet that you could hear the clock on the wall ticking. 17. This world around me seemed to freeze. I stared at the screen, unable to believe my eyes. All 6 numbers. All 6 of my numbers had been drawn. Oh my God. Faye exclaimed, jumping up from her chair. "You won. You've won the jackpot." I couldn't speak. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. $5 million. I just 5 million won. That's impossible. There's no such thing. The odds of winning the Golden Cush are 1 in 42 million. People buy tickets their whole lives and never win. Did I, who bought my first lottery ticket ever, hit the jackpot? You need to call the number on the ticket. Fa shook my shoulder, bringing me out of my stupor. Hurry, they'll tell you what to do. Next, I shifted my gaze to the ticket in my hand. Yes, there was indeed a phone number printed there for the winners, but I couldn't bring myself to believe what was happening. "Do you have a phone?" I asked her arsely. "Of course." Fa pulled her cell phone out of her pocket. "Here you go." With trembling fingers, I dialed the number. After a few beeps, a pleasant female voice answered me. "Golden Cush, how can he help you?" I think I won, I said uncertainly. Congratulations, replied the woman enthusiastically. May I have your name and ticket number? I gave my name and dictated the number printed on the ticket. Just a moment. Please, she said. I could hear her tapping on the keyboard. Yes, Mr. Whittle, you are indeed the winner of the winning ticket. Congratulations on winning $5 million. I got dizzy. So, it's true. I really did win. What do I do now? I asked. You need to come to our Halifax office tomorrow morning with your ticket and ID. We will do an official verification procedure and then you can collect your winnings. The office address is printed on the back of the ticket. I thanked her and hung up, still not believing what was happening. What's up? Fa asked impatiently. What did they say? You really won, I said, and my voice sounded alien. $5 million. Wow, F.A. exclaimed, clapping her hands together. That's amazing. What are y'all going to do with that kind of money? What am I going to do? That question brought me back to reality. $5 million, a sum that could completely change my life. I could buy a new house. I could travel. I could provide for my grandchildren's future. I could. And then I was struck by the thought of Hazel, my daughter who kicked me out off house saying she didn't need me without money. What will she say now that she knows I've won? Would she come running back, apologizing and trying to return the favor? I felt a strange feeling growing inside, a mixture of bitterness, resentment, and release. For the first time in years, I was truly free. Free from having to work my ass off to provide for an ungrateful daughter. Free from guilt and obligation. Free to choose how to live me life. I don't know, I finally answered Faye. I need to think it over. She nodded understandingly. Would you like to stay here tonight? The restroom is at your disposal, and tomorrow morning you'll go to the lottery office. Thank you. I was grateful for her kindness. I'd like to stay. Good night then, lucky you. She smiled and left the room, leaving me alone with me thoughts. I leaned back on the couch again, clutching the now priceless lottery ticket in my hand, $5 million. Yesterday, that amount would have seemed imaginal, unattainable. But today, it was a reality. What will I do with my new life? Where will I go? What will I do with this money? For the first time in a long time, I had a choice. A real choice, not limited by obligations to other people. And it was both frightening and exciting. I closed my eyes and tried to visualize my future life. It was hazy, uncertain, but there was no room for Hazel in her manipulations. I wasn't going to let her use me again. With that thought, it drifted back into sleep. But this time it was restless, filled with strange images and numbers dancing before. My eyes, $5 million. A new life, new opportunities, a new me. The morning began with a rush. F.A. brought me a cup of strong coffee and a fresh bun, then insisted on driving me personally to the lottery office. I can't miss a moment like this, she said, smiling. It's not every day my guest turns into a millionaire. The Golden Cush Lottery office was in a modern glass and concrete building in downtown Halifax. I clutched the ticket tightly in my hand, not even trusting my own pocket. Throughout the night, I woke up every hour, checking to make sure it was there, as if I was afraid my sudden happiness would melt away like a dream. When we entered the building, we were greeted by a young woman in a strict suit. She led us into a separate office where two men in expensive suits were waiting. Mr. Whittle. One of them stood up and extended his hand to me. Congratulations on your winnings. I'm Terrence Blackwood, director of the Golden Cush Lottery, and this is Alan Forrester, our financial advisor. The words barely registered in my mind. It all seemed like a dream, the kind you wake from and quickly forget, only to find yourself stuck in reality again. But this time, reality had changed completely. For the next few hours, everything moved in a blur. They checked my ticket, ran it against their database, asked for my ID. I signed a stack of papers, my signature barely legible, the forms piling up faster than I could comprehend. Alan, ever patient, explained the finer details, but they barely made sense to me. How could they? I was still trying to absorb the fact that I was holding a $3.2 million ticket in my hand. The sheer amount was unfathomable, something that a man like me could never have dreamed of. "Mr. Whittle, you have two options," Alan said, his voice steady and measured. "You can receive the full amount all at once, tax deductible, or you can choose installments over 20 years. From a tax perspective, the second option would be more favorable, but—" He trailed off, sensing my hesitation. "I want it all at once," I interrupted him, a mix of urgency and disbelief in my voice. After all taxes, that single lump sum amounted to $3.2 million, a sum I never could have accumulated in my entire life, a fortune that opened up a world of possibilities, a world of freedom. Freedom I had never known before. "You should see a financial advisor," Alan suggested kindly, handing me a business card. "My colleague Nicholas Wood specializes in handling large sums of money. He can help you manage your wealth wisely." I accepted the card without thinking twice, overwhelmed by the enormity of what was happening. After the formalities, I was handed a certificate to commemorate my winnings, and I was told that the money would be transferred to my account within 3 working days. The problem? I didn't even have a bank account. So I had to go to the nearest branch to open one. As Faye and I left the lottery office, she surprised me by giving me a big hug. I hadn't expected this from a woman I had only met the day before. "I'm so happy for you, Mr. Whittle," she said, her voice filled with genuine joy. "You deserve this happiness." I wasn't sure how to respond, but in that moment I was grateful for her kindness. I had just been handed a new life, and her small act of kindness made me feel like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't completely alone in this world. "Thank you, Faye," I said, sincerity in my voice, "for everything." I wanted to offer her a reward, something for her help, but she refused. "Just promise me one thing," she said with a smile. "Promise you'll be happy. And come? Visit me at the Seabreeze for tea sometimes." I promised, and though I knew it would be difficult, I planned to keep my word. But for that day, everything was a whirlwind. I had just won the lottery, and I had no idea what to do with it, where to go, how to manage this sudden windfall. The possibilities seemed endless, and yet I felt lost. I decided to follow Alan's advice and reach out to the financial advisor, Nicholas Woods, as soon as possible. Nicholas was a short, middle-aged man with attentive eyes and a calm demeanor. He listened intently as I explained my situation. "The first thing you need to do, Mr. Whittle," he said in his smooth, measured voice, "is not to make any hasty decisions. Sudden wealth often leads to impulsive spending, things people regret later." He was right, of course. I needed to think clearly. He suggested splitting the money into different categories, some for safe bonds and stocks to ensure a steady income, some for day-to-day expenses, and a portion for buying a house. "Did you say you wanted to move out of Halifax?" he asked, looking up from his notes. "Yes," I nodded. The memories here, the pain of everything that had happened with Hazel, were too much to bear. "Too many memories, and I don't want to run into my daughter," I added quietly. "I understand," Nicholas said with a sympathetic nod. "There are some beautiful real estate options in the suburbs or smaller towns along the coast. The prices are far lower than in Halifax, and the quality of life can sometimes be much better." We continued to talk for hours, discussing investment strategies, housing options, and how best to manage my newfound wealth. By the time the meeting ended, I felt a sense of relief. I had a plan, It wasn't much, but it was a start. I felt more confident than I had in days. Maybe, just maybe, I could build something new, something good out of the wreckage my life had become. For the next 2 weeks, I bounced from one hotel to another in Halifax. I kept changing my location, fearing that Hazel would find me. I didn't want to face her, didn't want to confront the coldness in her eyes again. I stayed away from familiar places, from the ones I knew I might run into her. The lottery organizers had kept my identity a secret, limiting the press release to a vague description of an elderly Halifax resident winning the jackpot. It was the perfect plan, and I was grateful. Still, the city felt different now, unfamiliar, unfriendly. Every corner seemed to remind me of Hazel, of the life I had built for her and my grandchildren. Nicholas Woods had recommended a realtor specializing in coastal real estate, and soon I found myself looking at homes far outside the city, in small towns along the coast. After days of searching, I found what I was looking for, a small, cozy house in the town of Moonlight Bay, just a 40-minute drive from Halifax. The house sat on a rocky shore, looking out over the ocean. It was everything I had ever wanted: peace, quiet, and solitude. The house had 2 floors, 3 bedrooms, and a spacious living room with huge windows that offered panoramic views of the water. The back patio sloped right down to a small beach. At low tide, a stretch of golden sand was exposed. It felt like the perfect place for a fresh start. "It's perfect," I said to the realtor, looking out at the endless horizon. "I'll take it." The price was $150,000, which seemed like a steal for a property like this. I decided to spend another $100,000 on repairs and furnishings. With all the investments in place, I still had over $2 million left, enough to live comfortably for the rest of my days. The deal went smoothly, and within a month of winning the lottery, I was moving into my new home. I ordered new furniture, hired a landscaper for the garden, and a crew for some minor repairs. But most importantly, I felt free. For the first time in years, I could wake up and do whatever I wanted, without thinking about money or anyone else's needs. I woke up early, had coffee on the terrace overlooking the ocean, and spent hours walking the beach collecting seashells. I read books I had long wanted to read but never had time for. Moonlight Bay was everything I needed. A small, quiet town with a relaxed pace of life. No noisy tourists, no crowded nightclubs. Just a few small cafes, a market where local fishermen sold their fresh catch, and a library where older residents gathered to play bridge or chess. Each morning, I'd stop by the local cafe by the sea, order my usual eggs Benedict and a large cup of coffee, and gradually I started to get to know the locals. Doris, the elderly cafe owner with her silver hair. Gilbert, a former sailor with a new story every day. Eustace, the local postman who knew everyone's business. They all welcomed me with warmth and curiosity, but never pried too much into my past. I told them I was a recent widower who had moved closer to the ocean to start over. It was mostly true, though I left out the part about the lottery. I said I had gotten a decent severance package after being downsized, which felt like a safe half-truth.